Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's great to be here as always. Thank you for tuning in. And first off, I'm going to apologize for my appearance. I am filthy. I'm covered in grease, and I spent the majority of my day doing some electrical work in a very sweaty garage, and I just have a finite amount of time to get this out today, so I apologize. You're just going to have to deal with my grungy appearance. That said, I want to do a video really quick about the Kyle Rittenhouse situation. Basically, Kyle put out a tweet that said that he was going to write in Ron Paul instead of voting for Donald Trump, even though Donald Trump supported him during his whole crisis, et cetera, et cetera. There's a fair amount of things to unpack here, but I also wanted to kind of treat this as a response video to the quartering, which is where I actually saw the story. So if you're not familiar with the quartering, Jeremy over there, I watch him a lot for my pop culture news. In my opinion, I find him a little bit thin on the hard politics stuff, but I really enjoy his pop culture news. And I saw this kind of Second Amendment related story on his channel, and generally speaking, when it comes to Second Amendment stuff, I almost always find Jeremy to be, I'd call him a normie. And I don't think that he'd be mad at me for saying that. I think that he would actually agree with that assessment. I don't think he's anti-Second Amendment by any stretch of the imagination. I just don't think that he's like fully immersed in our community like somebody like I would be, right? Such to the point that I even applied to his company, the Publica, to help pad out that aspect of their news coverage, because, again, whenever he talks about something that is firearms related, I find it not entirely technically sound. I like Jeremy. Just trying to be cordial here. Anyway, sorry for that tangent, guys. The purpose of today's video is really twofold. First is to explain why somebody who is a single issue Second Amendment voter might take the principled position that Rittenhouse is taking. But I think what a lot of people might be more interested in is how to talk to somebody who is a single issue Second Amendment voter and convince them otherwise. Because this whole like Kamala bad, Donald Trump good when it comes to Second Amendment stuff simply does not work. And unfortunately, I think that just a lot of people who aren't like really immersed in this issue just haven't fully paid attention to it. So as someone who has been relatively critical of Donald Trump's position on Second Amendment issues throughout the years, I'm going to try to explain this to you and how you can actually have those conversations in a productive way, because right now the current status quo, Kamala bad, blah, 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 it really is not working with people, and there's a better way to do that. I'm going to give that to you after we hear a quick word from today's sponsor, Capitalism Time. Today's video is brought to you by Medical Gear Outfitters. They are my go-to stop for anything medical related. It doesn't matter whether you need bumps and bruises kit or whether you need real equipment like chest seals or a cat tourniquet or something like that. They have got a bunch of medical kits over there. Again, they are my go-to shop, and they are great people. I've known Dietrich and the crew over there for going on like 10 years now. So they are definitely a place that you should check out if you're looking to augment your medical equipment needs. And they have a discount code for all of you who are VSO subscribers. You can find that information over on the affiliates page, and special thanks to Medical Gear Outfitters for making today's video possible. All right, so first, what's going on with the Rittenhouse position of writing in Ron Paul, even though Donald Trump really went to bat for him when he was going through his crisis and all that sort of stuff, which that is its own issue separately that I don't really care to dig into, that like backdoor type stuff. But for those of you who have not been living the 2A life, or might be just somebody who goes and shoots every once in a while, you might have a couple guns or something like that, and you don't really work in the 2A space or anything, Donald Trump has done some pretty bad stuff when it comes to Second Amendment related things. He's also done a fair amount of good stuff. Like, for instance, the judges that he has appointed to the Supreme Court and the inferior courts have been pretty much all-star cast, and they have done a lot of good work for the litigation that our community has brought up to them. So these are principled judges, and to be completely fair, to and transparent, Donald Trump doesn't really pick those people. He's given a list of people, and they massage him towards particular judicial picks. So he still ultimately has the final sign-off, but these are people that kind of are presented to him. So he didn't just pull them out of the hat, so to speak. So that aspect of it has been very positive, and I would say a direct result of those judicial appointments are some of the major wins that we've been getting, in the court system lately. However, on the other side of the coin, Donald Trump is literally the dude that said, take the guns first, due process later. That is really bad. Okay, to fully explain that position, Donald Trump, before he sought the Republican nomination for president of the United States in 2016, was a New York liberal. He was not fully integrated with the Second Amendment. He ran as a Republican, and there's kind of like this column of issues that you have to kind of check the boxes on. And for a lot of his Second Amendment positions, he went to the National Rifle Association. Well, again, if you are a normie and you don't know a whole lot about it, the National Rifle Association is quite possibly the worst Second Amendment organization that you could have picked. It is like super boomer FUD city. They don't know fuck all about the Second Amendment fight, and most of the time they spend the majority of their time fundraising and let these smaller, more nimble organizations like Firearms Policy Coalition, Gun Owners of America, Second Amendment Foundation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Sorry if I didn't mention you. Do a lot of that legwork for them, and then after that stuff has been footholded, they go in and, pick or choose. For instance, it was like a year in to the whole pistol brace situation before the NRA even attempted to do anything, when FPC was all the way up to the Fifth Circuit by that time. So that sort of thing. And I'm not trying to make this about them, but a lot of his positions when it came to policy stuff, he even confirmed on national television, was all the NRA's idea, which kind of tracks. Okay, we kind of suppose that was the way that is going, and the NRA has paid for that. You can look at their membership going through the floor, and they've been trying to reinvigorate themselves because basically ain't nobody buying anymore because they've sold us up the river too many times. Again, the NRA is the worst organization when it comes to Second Amendment advocacy. In fact, we have shirts that say NRA, not real activists, which brings me up to the bump stock situation. It was never about the actual bump stock. For those of you who haven't been following it, the Cargill case was just finished at the Supreme Court, and it has taken this long to strike down that executive ban. And there is exactly the problem. The executive agency, the ATF, Donald Trump used that agency to institute a unilateral ban on something outside of its executive power. And it did that by reinterpreting rules. So Donald Trump and the National Rifle Association literally wrote the playbook for everything that you have had to deal with for about the last 4 years under Joe Biden, with the pistol brace situation, the redefining of frames and receivers, the who's engaged in the business stuff. And if you're not following what I'm talking about, there have been multiple infringements by the executive branch through the ATF, I almost said NRA, which is basically the same thing at this point in time. Through the ATF, they have basically taken legislation that Congress has written, subverted the definitions, changed the definitions, put out a rule, and acted with the force of law to influence how you can conduct Second Amendment related conduct. That all started with Donald Trump. And that's why a lot of people in my space are pretty upset with him, because this is where it all started and this is where we are today. Now, could we have foreseen that? I don't know. that doesn't mean that it's not his fault. But what I would say is not even Obama did that sort of crap. He even stayed inside of his lanes, and he only made one executive change during his tenure, which is Rule 41F, and that's a discussion for a complete other day. Now that I have laid the groundwork, how is it that you can convince somebody who is basically like, yeah, Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, basically the same person when it comes to the Second Amendment? That's literally how a lot of us see that. The answer is not Kamala bad, Donald Trump good, because basically we have seen in action Donald Trump take non-principled stances on Second Amendment related issues.
In the position
Or
of that
might
individual.
take the firearms first and then go to court, because that's another system. Because a lot of times by the time you go to court, it takes so long to go to court to get the due process procedures. I like taking the guns early, like in this crazy man's case that just took place in Florida. He had a lot of firearms. They saw everything. To go to court would have taken a long time. So you could do exactly what you're saying, but take the guns first, go through due process second.
That is quite possibly the worst soundbite that he has ever recorded. We have a saying, and that is that dog don't hunt. So instead of trying to compare those two, which basically look the same to a lot of people looking through the 2A lens, I think it's a much better comparison to make to compare super gun grabber gun control to somebody like J.D. Vance, who I voted for in the state of Ohio because he went on the news and said we should probably just abolish the ATF.
This database is ultimately a backdoor to a gun registry in this country. And if you look at what liberals have done in Europe, at what they've done in Australia, once you allow gun registry, you effectively allow the disarming of your citizenry. This is ultimately about destroying the Second Amendment, just as the Democrats' alliance with big tech is about destroying the First Amendment. And my basic argument here, Tucker, is look, if the Democrats are going to ignore the heavily armed drug cartels on our southern border, but use the ATF to go after law-abiding citizens, why don't we just get rid of the ATF?
That is a stark difference. So if you're trying to differentiate the two tickets, then on one side, you've got the super duper gun controller leftist commies that want gun buybacks, which you can't buy back something that you'd never owned in the first place. Red flag laws, absolutely unconstitutional. Background checks by themselves, let alone universal ones, are unconstitutional, et cetera, right? If you're trying to differentiate yourself between them and the other side, well, you probably shouldn't focus on the person that has literally used executive overreach to accomplish political goals, specifically in that particular issue. You should draw attention to the dude who says, maybe this whole executive overreach by the ATF, maybe we should just literally disband them and get them out of here because they're clearly not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're subverting the Constitution of the United States. So I think that is the play when you're discussing these kinds of issues with principled Second Amendment single issue voters. The focus should be on J.D. Vance, and I think that is one of the major issues why Donald Trump picked J.D. Vance, because he has very strong First Amendment and very strong Second Amendment stances in his political run-up to his Senate campaign, which he is a junior senator. So there's a reason he picked him, and it is my contention that Donald Trump has real-world Second Amendment issues, and he uses J.D. Vance to pad that ticket in that area. And I think that it has worked marvelously because we've seen a pretty strong reversal in our community as it relates to that ticket with J.D. Vance on it, myself included. So anyway, if you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comment section down below. If you learned something, let me know what you learned. And if you feel so inclined, then send this video to both Kyle Rittenhouse and Jeremy Over the Courting. I'd love to see their take on the video. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on another video here at the VSO Gun Channel.